All right. Thank you for joining us, everyone. My name is Shanika Peck. I'm one of the education specialists over at Foundations, Inc. And today we have Dr. Brian Arnold from Sanford College of Education at National University. And so before we actually get started, I do want to share some information about Foundations. I'll also share a couple of links in our chat box to get everyone pretty much started here. So without further ado, Foundations is a nonprofit education uh, organization located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Our mission is to improve the quality of education by building the skills of educators. We work across the school day with after-school programs, with school districts, you name it, right? So a lot of you may be familiar with our National Professional Development, which is the Beyond School Hours Conference. And this will be taking place between February 14th to the 17th in New Orleans. So we're super excited because we are also featuring a very special keynote conversation centered around artificial intelligence in education, which will take place Friday, February 16th between 9:30 and 10:45 a.m. And one of our guests for our keynote conversation is also Dr. Brian Arnold. So if you are interested in joining us, please make sure you check out our website, get some information before you book your flights, and of course your hotel, because this conference will take place after Mardi Gras. So we definitely encourage you to book soon if you haven't already done so. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce today's facilitator, Dr. Brian Arnold. And let's bring more people in. Dr. Brian Arnold is the department chair for global innovation, social emotional learning within the Sanford College of Education at National University. He earned his PhD in educational technology and educational psychology from Michigan State University. Brian spent the first half of his career focused on media arts, such as films, games, design, and later teaching administration in those disciplines. His current research includes the AI, the metaverse, media motivation, innovation, learning, gamification, and play. Early career highlights include working as an editor for Nickelodeon Animation Studios in the late 90s on shows like SpongeBob SquarePants. Super excited. So now I'll go ahead and pass it over to Dr. Arnold.
Thank you, Shanika. I really appreciate the introduction. I see we've got a good sized crowd here, but not too many people for a good conversation. So hang tight while I do my presentation, and then we will get to the part where we have some discussion. Hopefully we are now looking at a slide deck. Can someone confirm that? Excellent. All right. Well, what I wanted to do was to get things started by calibrating my presentation and doing a little temperature check with everyone here with, excuse me, with a quick poll. So AI is a complex construct and there's a lot going on. A lot of people think that AI will lead us to a utopia, into a future that is perfect and wonderful. And some folks think it'll lead us into a dystopia with red-eyed robots chasing us around screaming. So what I wanted to do is figure out where folks are on this continuum. Shanika, is it possible to launch that poll? So you can all respond. Where are you? Are you towards the utopian end? Everything's going to be great. The dystopian end, or maybe somewhere in the middle, what I'm calling the topia. Sort of, you know what? It's not going to be all great. It's not going to be all bad. It'll be some good, some bad. And it's okay, be honest. I don't think anyone's going to see your name. So go ahead and throw it in there. Good. We're getting some spread here. Not all topians. Okay. Seeing some utopians, which is nice. One brave dystopian. Oh, two brave dystopians. All right. Be honest. Throw it out there. Let's have some discussions. Definitely a majority of topians. All right. Fair enough. We're all very reasonable people here. We've seen this all before. All right. So how far? Oh, we got 100% answered. Okay. 100% answered. You should all be seeing this. We've got 11% utopians, 11% dystopians, and 78% utopians, who are people who believe in a moderate approach, or they're not brave enough to tell us that how they really feel. One or the other. We'll find out. Okay, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. Note, just as we're going along, there's a nice group in the middle, and there's some outliers on both sides. Even in this small group of 20-some people, there's still people who are at the extreme on the far ends of that continuum. All right, thank you so much for doing that poll. I appreciate it. Let's dig in a little bit to what those topias might mean, if I can get my PowerPoint to work. Okay, so in a utopia, kind of a view, that this artificial intelligence, this new technology will solve all of society's ills, will eliminate war and poverty. And there's other folks on that other end of the continuum who think that we're going to lose our free will, our creativity, our problem solving, our ability to socialize. For a lot of us, if we look back at the last few rounds of emerging technologies that have come, they've changed things, but not everything. So what I like to say is technology changes, but human psychology does not. So are we going to do what we did with old tools with new tools? Absolutely, that's human nature. But the technology has changed, so we're going to have a different approach to it. It will probably be a productivity tool, but let's dive in. All right, that was all preamble. Thank you for engaging in the poll. Welcome to AI in Education, Teaching, Learning, and Technology. I just want to start off by saying it's a lot, and my presentation has a little bit of drinking from the fire hose quality to it, and that's because there's a lot going on, and I'm trying to run full speed through the museum for you so that you can get an overview, and then we can have some really good conversations. I've already been introduced. My name is Brian Arnold. I'm a department chair at National University, blowing through that. Start at the big picture. All right, where are we with all of this? If any of you have heard Marshall McLuhan, he's famous for the phrase, the medium is the message, but he said a few other things. And one of those things is we shape our tools, and then our tools shape us. And that's kind of what I'm going for during this presentation. When we talk about education, the relationship between education and technology is that it's going to shape us and we're going to shape it. Some of you might be familiar with the phrase, the pop culture loop. There's this reciprocal relationship, and it's happening now. So the big question is, for most of us as educators, as citizens of the world, is where do we fall in this continuum of AI doomers to tech positive people? Where do we stand on partnering with it? Because it affects how we're going to do so. So as we introduced in the poll, there's a lot out there in the media that is basically polarizing for us to try and consume. And all of those critical thinking and digital literacy skills that we've been practicing with our students and with ourselves are going to be all that much more important. There's a lot of utopian scenarios being rolled out. You know, it's going to solve all the cancer problems. It's going to make medicine customizable to individual levels. Maybe, but right now we're not there yet. So there's often this sort of emperor's new clothes quality to a lot of the utopian visions of what we see. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have these fear mongers, AI tech warning, it's coming fast, it's going to be a rough ride, all sorts of yellow language, all sorts of inciting, triggery words. AI is going to be the biggest threat to humanity. I mean, you know, back it up a little bit, come in hot, right? So what do we do about that? And one of the ways to address this sort of polarizing view of things, and it's polarized, for simplicity, as I did with the poll. It's also polarized because that's a great way to get people in groups. And yeah, so what's our solution? This middle of the road yellow line down the middle of the slide is having some conversations between the two groups, getting our thoughts and our feelings out so that we can form some thoughtful opinions based on what it is and what it isn't. By the way, all of these news stories here, these are actual headlines. I have links to them. These appeared. I'm not making this stuff up. It's that rough out there, I guess. Many of you are probably familiar. You've been reading, but it's blood in the streets. So, all right. So what do we need to know about this situation? That what's going on with AI is dynamic. The technology is emerging, and the technology evolves daily. I'll show you some examples later of a huge drama that took place in the AI sphere in 5 days. We don't know what's going to happen next, and it's important to keep that context as we're looking forward. And ultimately, in the same way that we all use the internet, but we all use it differently. What this tool is depends heavily on the outcomes and the needs that you have and how you want to use it. It's the same tool, but it's not the same experience for everyone. And its value is based on the experience you're going to have. And the other piece, and this is from doing these sort of discussions quite a few times in the last year, is we are all at very different places in our journey, right? Some of us are creating our own AIs. Some of us can't spell AI yet. Some of us are in the middle. It's a whole big thing. So just sort of get comfortable with the fact that we're all at a different place and we're trying to make meaning out of what all of this is. So starting with first principles, big picture, when we say this AI is a new technology, what even is technology, right? So I'm just going to start with this premise, and there are more than one definition, but if you start with the idea that technology amplifies human ability, okay? My ability to remember is amplified by a pencil. Someone's ability to tell me a story is amplified by a book. A megaphone helps me shout. I couldn't possibly speak loud enough for all of you to hear me without this teleconference, and you couldn't see well enough to see me without this technology. It's amplifying our human ability. So AI is one of those amplifiers, but it's very, very powerful. That being said, I asked ChatGPT to make an image for me, to draw me an image of caveat emptor, buyer beware. I do this because, as I mentioned before, we need to use our critical lenses when dealing with this technology. And right below the bar where you type in your prompt in ChatGPT, it says right there, ChatGPT can make mistakes. Consider checking important information. Okay, so this isn't like sneaky insider information. It's right there. This technology makes words, and it makes you the words that it thinks you want to hear. That's different than making facts. It's often bundled with search engines, which also kind of implies that it makes facts, but it doesn't. And so anything that you get from it, it's very important to take it with a grain of salt, to scrutinize it very closely, and to customize it and personalize it for your own use. By the way, if anyone has any thoughts or questions along the way, please go ahead and throw them in the chat, and we can pause and take a side trip there. Okay, I apologize again, everyone's at different levels with this, but I thought I'd just get some basic terms out of the way. What is ChatGPT? So it's one of the open AIs that we use at the consumer level ever since last November. And what they basically did is they took a generative pre-trained transformer, GPT. It's fun to use at parties. And it was difficult to interact with. So they wrapped it in a chatbot, the kind of thing that you use to talk to customer service. So now it's much easier for consumer to interact with that technology. And those interactions help to train the technology itself. So it's a reciprocal relationship there as well. There's a lot of these. Google has Bard, Microsoft has Bing, but they also kind of have OpenAI. There's Pi, which is a really sassy one if you want to use it. There's Claude, there's Llama, there's a whole bunch of these things. There's more popping onto the market every day. When we talk about AIs, we tend to talk about the ones that we use, like ChatGPT. Those are generative AIs. And generative means that it remembers the last thing you asked it, unlike Google. Well, unlike Google's supposed to. So when you say to ChatGPT, what's the sweetest fruit? And it says, I'm just going to say grapes. I don't know, right? And then you say, but what's the shiniest one? It will know you're still talking about fruit. It'll remember what you gave in that first prompt. That's what it means by generative. It will remember the conversation. Different tools remember better or differently than others, but it can track a conversation and have a much more natural flow. The other side of the AI that we're looking at is the kind you don't really see. It's kind of a black box thing. It's what's predicting things, and we used to call it algorithms, and it sort of is, it sort of isn't. But basically, what sort of ads do you see when you're surfing Amazon? What sort of things are suggested to you by Google? That's also an artificial intelligence. It works, but it's kind of behind the scenes. You don't see it. There's a term called XAI, or explainable AI. You don't know what's going on in the background there. So that's another piece. Now, again, here we have artificial intelligence in higher education. Trick or treat. Sounds like a polarizing title yet again. There's the weird, it's either to get people's attention or to break them into two camps. I'm not sure, but just please continue to wear that critical thinking lens hat, whatever piece of wearable tech you have when engaging with this content, because the media will polarize it. Okay. Again, what AI is and what it isn't. It is a value neutral tool like a frying pan or a swatch. Okay. So it's value neutral like a frying pan. You could use a frying pan to feed a family of 12, right? Or you could beat a badger to death with it. It's the same tool. Sorry for the example, but it is a tool. Can it be used for good? Yes. Can it be used for bad? Will it be used for both? Absolutely. So there's also an argument that in terms of teacher impact, this is like the calculator, where math teachers had to adjust to the fact that students had access to a calculator, and it changed the way they taught. That is true, but it's a little bit more like someone invented the calculator, electricity, the computer, the internet, and the mobile phone all at once. It's exponentially bigger than the calculator, but it will have that same impact of changing the paradigms we use to teach and assess, changing the way that we understand what tools are available and how we assess the skills and the outcomes that we're looking to. Here's an article just from this year by Candelon. People are actually starting to do research in this area, which is great. It took a while to get going because obviously the tool hasn't been around that long at the consumer level. So when using these tools, consider that in general, people seem to mistrust the technology in areas where it can contribute massive value and to trust it too much in areas where the technology isn't competent. What does that mean? I'm just going to unpack that for you for a second, and then I'll go back to the chat in case there's some comments we blew past. What this is talking about is that we tend to trust the outputs that make our lives more convenient, and we tend to distrust the content we don't believe it could possibly understand. And those are beliefs about the technology that aren't the same as understanding about the technology. And so using the tool, checking its results, looking through it, seeing what it's giving you, what it's not giving you, and really digging in is the best way to understand what it is and what it isn't, so that you can rely on the fact that when it gives you a solution to a math problem, it's probably right. And when it gives you a description of maritime law, it may or may not be right. It might be making a few things up. It might be borrowing maritime law from Scandinavia, and you're looking for something in Europe, right? So hopefully that's not in Scandinavia. I'm bad at geography. Okay, so let's zip back to the chat really quick. Looks like people are echoing. Okay, more tools that are for free. Excellent. All right. Can I ask someone to monitor the chat for me and just shout out if there's something that I should definitely hit pause for? Okay, moving forward. I appreciate the comments. Please keep them coming. All right, theme here. This is a polarizing issue. So, and we have a fact sheet on October 30th. President Biden issues an executive summary about security and trustworthiness of artificial intelligence. So this brings up two very important issues aside from the polarizing aspect of all of this. One is we Americans tend to think of things in terms of America. This is a global tool. This is something that's being used all over the world. And when we start to think about what sort of regulations, what sort of rules, what sort of behaviors should moderate this, it's very easy to sort of fall into an American-centric view of this, but this is something that will impact globally. Also, there's a lot of polarization at the political level, which, as we know from the past, polarizing people is a great way to sort of control how things unfold. So I promised you, well, first of all, we do live, if you heard the term VUCA, we live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous space. That's what AI is because it's changing and evolving so rapidly. That being said, there's still a lot that you can do to understand and embrace and work with it and find ways to partner with it that work for you and your students. So I promised you that this very quick drama. So some of you might or might not be familiar. Sam Altman is sort of the figurehead of OpenAI, the very first AI that came out. On November 17th, this is not very long ago, he was ousted as CEO of the company. Fast forward through 5 days of lots of very interesting drama. I can't wait for the movie of the week. And he was returned as the CEO of OpenAI in a new role. I mean, it is ripped straight out of the TV Guide headlines. It's destined to be a major motion picture. But the point with this is, this was very important, but it's sort of indicative and mirrors the rate of change that happens in these spaces. 5 days for someone to be ousted and returned. It's a whole big thing. Now, one of the things that he was supposedly ousted for is there's a lot of proprietary words that go along with AI. and it can feel like alphabet soup, and it's hard to keep up. So the latest ones to emerge from this are Q Star, which was supposedly the name of the project, which the CEO wasn't completely candid about. And one of the reasons that it's important, whether it's true or not, I have no idea the veracity of any of this. It all just plays like media to me, is that people are concerned about the FOOM. That's another fun term some of you may already be familiar with or not. Basically, the idea that right now the artificial intelligence that exists is what's called artificial narrow intelligence, ANI. And what it does is you can teach it things, and then it can do those things with varying degrees of skill, but it doesn't teach itself. It's not a true artificial intelligence. It doesn't learn. And theoretically, when they finally create the first artificial intelligence that can learn on its own, even in its worst possible states, and again, this is all theory, this is science fiction still, in its worst possible state, it can then start to teach itself. And the rate at which it can go from the worst, most horrible, not very smart AGI, artificial general intelligence, to something that's really robust is incredibly rapid. And FOOM is the sound it makes as it races from that early stage all the way to being a robust thing. So if you think about it, it can think at the speed of a computer 24/7 with no interruptions. It's not waiting for us slow humans to feed it little pieces. So there was a whole big thing about that. The truth of all of that, I have no idea, but just sort of giving you some idea of what's sort of the drama in Silicon Valley, what's going on behind all this, and where this can all be turned into something that's sensationalized and really pulls focus from how is this tool useful to us in our lives? How can we partner with it in a way that benefits us and our learners? So how can we partner with it at education? See, I put the AI in there. I'm really into that. You'll have to forgive me. Okay, so I've broken it down into 3 easy steps because people like that. The core of it is that we need to feel our feels and then think our thoughts. This is not indicative. This is not specific to AI, of course. It's just how we are. We need to talk about and share and get all of our concerns about being run by robot overlords out. We need to talk about how we can retire with our guaranteed basic income and never have to lift a finger again and just play with the kids. Get that all out there so that we can then start thinking about what it is and what it isn't and how we're going to partner with it. So that's step 2. Then you partner. It sounds like Kate's off mute. Do you want to share something? Can somebody who's running the meeting mute that? Thank you so much. Awesome. Look at these tech savvy folks. Okay, so step 2 is to partner with your students to build personalized instruction and assessment. That's a lot to unpack. Basically, you don't just want to rub AI on everything and hope it gets better, right? What you want to do is, okay, what are the goals and outcomes you have right now? And in what way can these tools support those goals and outcomes to the benefit of your students, your learners? And there's a lot in that, but that's sort of the path forward. Longer term, what we want to try and do, this is my perspective, my opinion, is balance personalization and customization, which is where we're headed. We are all headed in a place where we can design the most blissfully isolated echo chambers in the history of humanity. We want to combine that where people can be comfortable with communities of practice that expose us to new ideas, that have a sense of community to them, and make us feel engaged with the world around us. There's a lot there. I'm just going to let it sit for a second and move forward. So what are the benefits and the challenges of AI from an educational perspective? I put digital literacy ridiculously large there because I do believe that it's really key, is that you're going to be exposed to a lot of information or a lot of data. Separating signal from noise is going to be a challenge, and you're probably already dealing with that. You're finding your own filters, your own ways of handling the incoming information. So what I will share is, and this is something I've noticed, I have my daughter is 23 years old, watched her grow up. She's gone through the different phases, and I've watched her generation. I'm 52, I'm a little older. I'm Gen X, she's Gen Z, I guess. Either way, each generation, and you've probably seen this as well, seems to want to communicate in a more basic or simple way. This isn't laziness per se. In general, this is the desire to avoid social risk. They don't want to be embarrassed. Most people rate embarrassment as a bigger fear than death, right? So these kids are looking for ways to minimize the opportunity to be embarrassed. So the AI, much like Google, gives them an opportunity to ask the basic questions they don't understand, the questions they weren't paying attention and now it's too late to ask because it seems awkward, the questions that feel inappropriate. They have this place where they can ask these questions or get the support in an understanding that might be embarrassing to ask for in a public setting. So the ability to ask questions and get consultations without fear of being embarrassed, it doesn't seem like the biggest thing in the world, but I think it's a game changer. And I think it's going to be important. Is there a downside to all that? The isolation, the echo chambers? Absolutely. So it's a balancing act. All right. That being said, why would you bother to choose AI? You've been teaching all your life. Your students are happy. Why would I bother to do it? Well, it's up to you, but it can act as a tutor for students that need remediation, and we can talk about that a little bit more if you want. It can provide a model of something. Some students just want to be given an outcome and they want to charge towards it, right? Others, they want to see a lot of examples so that they can understand what it is they're doing. These tools can provide models. They can act as a sounding board. These tools, you can make it serve as your steel man argument as you try to hone, I'm going to pitch something, I'm going to present an idea. You know, it can help you critique and strengthen and find flaws in the holes. It can be a creativity nudger. I don't know how many of you, go ahead and put in the chat if you have a fear of the blank page. Does that slow you down? Does that ever stop you? Does that ever cause procrastination for you? You can just put a yes or a no in the chat. Okay, got a big oh yeah from Scott. Yes, okay. Awesome. So one of the things that the tool can do, and I do see some NU folks out there lurking in the shadows. One of the things this tool can do is it can get you straight to a second draft of something. You can give it the same prompt that you're noodling around on. What is it that I need to create? And it will give you a version. Now, it is absolutely incumbent upon you to go through that version with a fine-tooth comb and make sure it's really saying what you want to say and it's headed in the direction that you want to head and you're filling in the gaps. It's not necessarily perfect, but it's a great place to start so that you're starting with editing rather than starting with writing. And for some people, that's a really big deal. I'm going to throw out another example here, and this is, I'm sure no one else but me has ever experienced this, but occasionally I'll get an email and I can't respond to it for 24 hours until I calm down, right? So what this tool could do for you, and it's a kind of an extreme example, is you could feed your tirade into this and tell it to rewrite it professionally and friendly, and then you can turn it around in 20 minutes instead of having to wait the 24 hours while you calm down. Of course, you guys are all cool. You don't have this issue, but occasionally happens to me. So it can be another thing to sort of just mitigate that turnaround time. And again, it's a place to get feedback without social risk. All right. Moving forward, is there anything in the chat that I need to respond to? People just saying yes and no. Excellent. Scooting forward, there are a lot of considerations when looking at technology, AI in education, right? There are benefits in enhanced personalization. You can create learning environments, that virtual assistant 24/7 available I touched on a little bit earlier. It can help support social emotional learning. There are challenges when using this tool. If you upload your work or your assignment or your content to the AI, you are sharing that data. It's part of its training and it's out there. So there are cybersecurity issues there. There is an issue of just faculty buying into this tool if you use it at your institution and understanding how to use it. There are potential gains and pitfalls to exacerbating or offsetting the digital divide. If someone didn't have the internet before, now they don't have the internet and they don't have access to the AI tool. In many ways, it can help create more equity in the sense that everyone gets the level of assistance that they need so they can all reach that same level. But there's also the potential for excluding the very same people who were excluded before, only worse. So it needs to be thoughtfully approached and thoughtfully applied. As far as the future landscape, it's going to be going through continuous improvements, and it's important to think as educators about what your duty is to your learners. So if not anyone in this room, of course, if the idea of this technology is scary or off-putting or daunting and you want to avoid it, you're creating a downstream inequity for your learners who will need to survive and compete in a world in which this is a tool for good or bad. That being said, I was already noodling around with ChatGPT, and I created a Socratic GPT. And what it does is when the student uses it and they ask it a question, it will then ask them guiding questions to help get them to the answer rather than simply providing them with the answer. Just an example of how this tool could be used in a way other than simply as find information or do the work for me. Awesome. Things to keep in mind when using these tools. One, we like our learners. We are not at war with our learners. And everyone's probably thinking, obviously we're not at war with our learners, but I've heard a lot of conversations around plagiarism, and you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference between we are at war with our students and we are helping them. Also, we still need to be critical of all the output that ChatGPT gives us. So I use ChatGPT or DALL-E 3, that component of it, to generate a keep in mind graphic. Can anyone tell me what's wrong with it in the chat? Well, I'll let it slide, but most of us only use one N in the word mind. I'll give you that. So it just doesn't type right yet. That being said, we're moving into a new paradigm. The ways that we assessed things will probably not work very well in this new reality, and we need to be clever about it. So I talked about we are not at war with our learners. Just consider ways to get at why students are plagiarizing rather than catching them at plagiarizing. Is the activity not coming across as meaningful or relevant? What is it that's causing this cheating behavior? Are they simply unaware of how to properly cite or properly be transparent about what they're doing? And just find ways to partner with them as this technology evolves, so you don't end up in sort of an adversarial or gotcha situation. Be clever, bring your A game, re-examine current activities and look at them in terms of, are they relevant to your learners? Are they authentic experiences? And you can't answer those questions, only they can. Does the value that you see in your assignment leap out of the learner, or is it something they're only going to understand at the end, or it's kind of esoteric and it's squinting a little bit? What's ChatGPT proof for now is assignments or work that's authentic, it's relevant, it's personalized to their unique experience. And at least for the next 10 to 15 minutes, if it's media rich, it's much harder to fake. Okay, so look for opportunities to partner with this in a way that's authentic and relevant to your learners. All right, we're almost at the end where we have a conversation. Hopefully I haven't blown through too much of my time. There are a lot of folks out there who are probably weighing the pros and cons of maybe avoiding this technology until they retire. And I have this picture of someone with their back to the ocean wave. I don't recommend this strategy. It's probably going to crest and fall on you. And looking at it and diving into the wave and popping out the other side and having some fun playing in the water is going to be a much richer experience than not. The other piece I'm going to throw out as just sort of a perspective piece is we've spent a lot of time as a species looking for answers, right? The hero's quest is to go out and find answers. That's the whole big idea. And things are flipped a little bit right now. The skill moving forward is going to be asking the right question. The answers, non-metaphysical ones, are out there. They're accessible. They exist. The trick is knowing how to prompt the tool, knowing how to communicate, how to think, how to structure your idea in a way that you can ask the right question to get that information. That's the tool. And it's not a huge shift, but it is a pretty profound one from the answer to the question. You know, for those of you that have done your advanced studies, those research questions, you go over and over and over and over trying to work those out. That's what this is about. Asking the right question is going to become almost, if not more important than the answer itself in this AI world that we move into. And again, I've mentioned this before, we have a once in a generation opportunity to revisit what assessment looks like. Okay, the essay, I know we all love that beautiful workhorse, but it's probably coming towards its last days. It's no longer assessing what we think or pretended it was. Right? So we pretended it assessed our ability to critically think, to organize our thoughts, to plan ahead, to communicate. Well, those are all still incredibly important skills. And we're going to have to get creative about the ways in which we teach and assess those same skills. But an essay long-term probably won't be it anymore because it'll just be too easy to turn in something that's been automated. That, again, that doesn't mean those skills aren't incredibly important or teachable or accessible. We just need to really think hard about how we're going to do that. All right. I was asked to talk about what does AI in education look like at the university level, and maybe some of my peers will chime in as well. This is intentionally the most chaotic slide I could think of, because it's a lot going on. Nobody's on the same page. We have a great article from the president of National University, published in Newsweek on should we temper our AI hysteria, right? That polarization that's going on. That's a great one. We've got an article on students outrunning faculty use in AI. And that's another big theme I wish I touched on a little bit earlier. A lot of us are looking for a signal from our institutions. Can I use this tool? Am I using this tool right? They're going to ask for policies. They're going to ask for rules. What they really want to know is, look, I'm going to use this tool. Do I have to sneak it, or can I be transparent about it and not get in trouble? Okay, so they're using it. The question about all of this is it okay to do it publicly, or do I have to pretend that I'm not? Okay, so that being said, there is another mindset to kind of keep in mind as well is, oh, we're all going to get replaced by the technology. Right. I mean, that's sort of the dystopian piece. History would say that automation and augmentation will be our future. I'm like, automation, oh, I'm out of a job again. No, you're not. Hang on, right? So 50, 60 years ago, if you wanted to write a paper, you got out your trusty old typewriter. Maybe eventually it would make a whirring noise with loud clacking keys, but there was no word processing. The process of processing your words has been automated for decades. That part of your job has been automated for decades, and you're fine. It's different, but you're okay. And then augmented means that it changes kind of the way you do business. So the way that you teach, the way you learn, the way you assess will be augmented by these technologies. And some of the things that you used to do laboriously by hand will be automated. None of that translates into we don't need teachers. So just kind of throw that out there. So it's really about adapting to the automation and augmentation rather than that you have to swallow this all whole and use everything all the time. I feel like I've talked way too much and I want to hear what all of you think. So basically, we were part of a group at the university level. All the universities are trying to come up with these policies. We came up with a disposition statement, which still hasn't been distributed, by the way. But because we're still like making sure that everyone's on board with it. But basically, how does your institution feel about AI? What's permissible? What's acceptable? There are some disciplines, there are some schools where this needs to be locked down really tight based on regulations and accreditations, and others are like, hey, let's play with it, let's figure it out together. And you kind of want to know where your institution stands with all that. And again, we're not at war with our students. When you have these discussions with them, looking at them as teachable moments where you find ways to understand, hey, wow, your writing was like this last time and now it's very different. Can you help me understand why it's different? Just in a very proactive, positive way, or that I've caught you. There's a machine here that says that your machine did this thing and there's an 85% chance it's all gonna fall apart. So, okay, that being said, well, I still have more slides. Where are we going? Essentially, hang on, I just need to do a time check. Okay, we're okay-ish. Essentially, these emerging technologies continue to reveal systemic flaws. There's lots of things in our culture that get by because we don't look at them very closely. And this AI is bringing them into the light. So what does paraphrasing really mean in academia? So when a computer reads a bunch of sources and paraphrases it and spits it out, it's stealing, it's cheating, it's breaking the law. But that's exactly what we do when we write papers. So again, it's a little bit of a subtle point, but it's starting to reveal places where we really haven't worked things through. So in the future, we're going to have bigger, more powerful and integrated versions of this technology. Think about the mobile phone. Think about all the different technologies that are bundled into that one piece. Then in the future, this is Brian's world, we're going to have AI, metaverse, internet, computer, email, all in some sort of device. And as one of the signals of that, I don't know if you've seen this, it's the Smart Pin, which is a fun new product that's out there. This gentleman is wearing. It is a pin that you can interact with by speaking to it, and it will access an AI, and you can ask it questions, and it can then either out loud respond to you with answers or do a very limited projection screen and project the image on whatever surface you have handy. I can think of 100 reasons why it's wildly impractical, but as far as wearable tech and a signal of the future, I think it's super cool. And as you're trying to figure out your way in the future, there's lots of frameworks you can look at. I like the 3 Horizons framework. We don't really need to dig into that right now. There's just a lot of ways to pull this apart depending on what your interests and questions are. Speaking of which, with all of the whole 20 minutes we have left, I don't think we have enough folks to warrant breakout groups unless this gets really robust. What is on everyone else's mind? What leaps out at you based on what's discussed here? Who has some stories of, wow, you all need to take on this productive practice, or here's my cautionary tale of how I crashed and burned? Please raise your hand or signal to us. Be one of those brave people who's not daunted by social risk, and go ahead and share your tale with us. Anybody feeling
Hi, Dr. Arnold. This is Sylvia Miles. Hi. So you were talking earlier about the father of AI and leaving the work and then going back. But Jeffrey Hinton from he left Google. You were talking about somebody different, right? Yeah, so because Jeffrey Hinton left Google because he wants to talk more openly about AI because he's concerned about digital analog, and he describes it. You talked earlier about the technology, teaching the technology. Could you talk a little bit more? Because my understanding of that is that the technology will become so advanced that it will teach itself and it evolve. And that's how you get us running from all of the robots, because they're taking over the planet.
I think that's an excellent question. And you're right, there are a lot of people at high levels within the industry, based on my understanding from reading the trade magazines, I don't have any insider information, that are concerned about the direction things are going, because they're being run like a business. And it's a little bit more like they're running the business of nuclear weapons. And so the potential downside, the dystopian possibilities are real and they're large. And there are a lot of people at the top who are concerned that the wisest choice may not prevail. And so they're leaving their positions. The person I was talking about, Sam Altman, was more of the developer of the OpenAI, which was a very bold move. It didn't come out to the public as a proprietary thing that you had to pay for. It was open, like open resources. And that was a big deal. So the artificial general intelligence, the idea that it will be able to teach itself and rapidly evolve, does not necessarily lead straight to the red-eyed robot chasing us through the streets. However, it seems a lot more plausible under that scenario. So the concern is that we have some stopgap regulations in place, Asimov's 3 rules of robotics, if you have to borrow from science fiction, in place so that that doesn't happen and it doesn't get out of hand. But yes, the idea, and I do see Joan has her hand up, just one second. I do think that once it's able to do its own searching and teaching and seeking, we're dealing with a different entity than something that just has to be spoon-fed. Joan, did you want to chat?
Yes. Sorry. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on Sylvia, because it's a real concern and it's a lot of misconceptions. And I think it's a lack of understanding of how the systems work. So for educators, what are some activities we can do? Like, are there a set of lessons that we can introduce to our students to help kind of show how it works, maybe an engineering challenge or a design challenge for them to create their own, so that with that understanding, then they can see how far-fetched some of these ideas are, or some aren't. It's based on user, like how it's programmed by the end user. And I'm thinking more with the robotic calls where people will send in SWAT teams to people's homes, something like that. So people can find a way to use a good instrument for the wrong purpose.
I love everything about that, Joan. Yeah, the technology will change, but human psychology won't, right? So people who are going to abuse or exploit technology will abuse or exploit this technology. As far as like a specific assignment, I mean, you could probably Google and get a whole bunch of returns. But I think in the beginning, you know, one of my interests is play. I think really just sitting down and spending an hour playing with the tool, having your students do the same. Yes, you want to give it some guided direction, but understanding the affordances of the tool leads to an understanding of really what is its capacity, where is this, could this go, and what's really more hyperbole, at least based on where we are right now and today. I don't have a specific ask for you or assignment for you, but I'm pretty sure those things are aggregated and available should you seek them out on Google. Great question.
Can I chime in here, Brian? This is Scott.
Yeah, please. You probably know.
Yeah. Well, I know at the K-12 level, there are some resources with curricula, and maybe they would be adapted or maybe they wouldn't need to be. And I'm going to put them in the chat. ISTE, the International Society of Technology and Education, and MIT, and a few others have the step-by-step curriculum to teach with and about AI, mostly about AI. So I'll share those in the chat.
Thank you, Scott. Scott recently got his EDD from UCLA in algorithms and AI type technology things. So a voice to be trusted. Thank you, Scott. Other thoughts, other questions, other experiences, concerns? Should this be more regulated than it is right now? What would that look like? Who would do it?
So what's the answer?
Well, and that's a real so to get to that, you have to explore the difference between morality and ethics. So morality, there's a right and a wrong, okay? But this is an ethical question. There isn't right and wrong. There's just the choices we make based on the priorities that we give. This tool could be the salvation of humanity or the end of humanity. So how do we regulate that based on whose priorities, whose values? Are we protecting the greater good? Are we protecting the rights of the individual? Are we looking long term? Are we looking short term? Well, there's a lot of ways that we can slice the carrot. So yeah, see, the questions become a lot more important than the answer in the way that I'm presenting it. But I don't have a ready answer. If someone wants to weigh in with what they think the answer is, we could be all ears. Can I counteract your social risk with celebrating whatever it is you say? You could be a hero. Do folks feel like they're, could you put in the chat whether you feel like you're far down the road in your journey, just beginning, or kind of in the middle with understanding AI and how to partner with it and how that's all going? Beginning, middle, far down the road. Okay.
Hey, Dr. Arnold, while
Yeah.
we're getting responses in the chat, there were a few questions around ChatGPT in particular. How do you know how ChatGPT is generating this information?
Generating so the ChatGPT is what's called a large language model, and so it read several billion words of text, and it starts to understand the patterns of those words. I hope I'm answering the real question, and predict. Like Maggie had a little pharmacy kit. That last word being pharmacy kit is very unlikely. It's most likely lamb, right? Mary had a little lamb. So it understands and it learns and it studies the patterns of words to predict which word will come next. That large language model, it's predictive pre-trained transformer. So it looks at that and says, okay, based on your prompt, based on your question, and then it gets a lot more nuanced than that, based on the tone, based on where you are, based on previous questions, you know, what kind of information are you looking for? And then in the last couple of months, it's been hooked up to, I think it's Bing, whatever the Microsoft search engine is, so that it can pull. Originally, it was only trained on data from the internet through 2021, but now it's almost real time, if not real time. So it does a search and it pulls from that and aggregates from that. Joan?
Is that the same thing that happens with like Grammarly when we type in, or when it does the autocorrect on our telephones, on our cell phones when we're doing a text message?
Okay, so I think you're talking about autocomplete. Yeah, where it tries to, it suggests what the end of the sentence might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That, so it is sort of autocomplete on steroids. That's an excellent analogy. That's primarily how that technology works. And again, it's there to make the words you're asking for, not to generate facts. And that's sort of the key piece to keep in mind. Did I answer the question that was asked about how it works? I'm very much oversimplifying, but I don't have a particularly deep knowledge of the mechanics behind it. Were there other questions in the chat that we overlooked? Well, while you're thinking, I saw a lot of people say they're at the beginning of the journey. So the two really most important things, I think, in the beginning of the journey are to play with the toy. Your doctor's note is to use it 2 to 3 times a week. Sit down with it, put your butt in the chair, and just start asking it questions. And you can have fun with it. Have it write you a story. Have it do things. I recently got a puppy, and I have a picture of my puppy with my older dog, and I uploaded that image and said, please write me a children's story based on this image. And it wrote something really charming, and I played with it a little bit. It was just a lot of fun. Not going to change the world, but my understanding of what it does and what it doesn't evolved at that point. I understand a little bit more about what it's capable of. You know, ask it questions that require synthesis of ideas, not, you know, how much is a roast beef sandwich at Arby's, where it's a concrete answer, but like, what is the average weight of a chicken? Maybe that's online, maybe it's not, but it causes it to synthesize, like, which box office movies in the last 40 years starred someone from Nigeria, right? Something that would be kind of hard to do on Google. And then it can start to put those things there. And then, of course, check it and see if it's actually correct. And just sort of learn how to play with its affordances. I've had a lot of luck when I've asked it to look for scholarly things for me, is I just, in the prompt, I say, only give me citations if they're real. And it seemed to help. So understanding how to talk to and think like the tool will enhance your ability to get the results from it that you want. Scott, do you have any suggestions for new users? Also talk about it. Talk with everyone you know about what they're doing with it and their experiences, and come to these webinars, which you have. So I appreciate that. Scott Moss, are you there?
I'm here. What was the
Any
question?
wisdom for people who are new to AI, how to get more familiar with it, how to get better at it?
I would just yeah, just use it for a variety of tasks. One thing to remember though is, like, one of the things you can do is you can have it revise your writing or emails or something. But an important thing to remember that I want to add is that keep out personally identifying information, because whatever you type in is becomes user data, and we don't know where that goes. So you don't want to give up your own personal information or that of others. But yeah, doing things like looking at your writing. If you're let's say you're a college instructor, create an outline for a course, come up with some relevant assignments using this objective. Just kind of think of, as you're doing your work, maybe pause and think about, how could these tools help? But the big thing I'll say also is read the output. Don't just say, oh, hey, this is good, let me just kind of slap it on there. You give it a good look, and then you can iterate, kind of have it refine the output, or you can revise it yourself. But certainly don't, it's a time saver and often a good start for things like a course outline or assignment ideas, but it's not going to be, boom, done, probably.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate the different cautionary pieces as well as the application pieces. I have a fun one for you. If you're comfortable with the internet knowing what's in your fridge, is take a picture of what's in your fridge, go ahead and upload that and say, what can I make for dinner? And it will make some suggestions based on what it's properly identified in your fridge and different combinations for recipes that you could put together. So just again, playing with it, having fun, incorporating it into what you're doing in your normal day, whatever questions you have, whatever research areas, or, you know, whatever, what are you working on at work? Oh, okay, I have to create an activity for fifth graders where they're going to run around and they're going to learn more about how grass grows. Like, just throw it all in there and say, give me some suggestions. And it's not particularly brilliant, but it's read the internet and it's going to pull some good stuff and throw it out there. And you're like, oh, I love this, I hate that. And then you can start putting together your own work. So as Scott was saying, look for ways to incorporate it into what you're already doing, the outcomes that already drive you. See if it can make some suggestions to facilitate what it is you're doing. All right, I suspect we are sneaking up on time. Anybody have any other comments or suggestions or thoughts? All right,
I can chime in again if we've got the time. This is Scott again.
please.
I know people are very concerned about cheating and these kinds of things. I do this thing in a training that I do where we use Google form and have different scenarios of how one might use ChatGPT, such as copying, pasting the paper, using it to generate ideas, using it to give suggestions. And then in the Google form, we ask people to say, that's definitely cheating, maybe cheating, not cheating, definitely not cheating. And what you get from that is people will disagree on those things, like what's an ethical use and what's not. And what I would suggest is share these, as Brian was saying, share these tools with your students and your coworkers. And in that context, talk about, okay, here's what we're doing. Is this ethical? Is this cool in this context? Understanding that is going to vary from person to person and context to context.
Awesome. Well said. Yeah, one of the biggest tools you have is each other. That conversation, that communities of practice, the communities of concern, common goals, common language, so that you can be smarter together and figure out a way forward on how to productively partner with this tool and develop the literacy to critically assess it, to critically consume it. So you're not just presented with, guess what we're doing now, but you can have an articulate conversation about what that looks like and help shape and drive that future. Well, that's it for me. If we're okay, I think we can have everyone have an extra 2 or 3 minutes in their hour to go log on real quick and ask some questions to ChatGPT.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold. Now, before everyone go ahead and take their leave, I think that was a great conversation at start. And to really introduce our next webinar, which will be a workshop webinar where everyone will be able to take these AI applications and AI resources and apply it to real world experiences. So during this webinar, everyone will be able to collaborate and brainstorm with other educators, applying these different tools that are tailored for educators. So if you're definitely interested on learning more about different AI resources that you can use right away in your classroom or your after school lessons and activities and things like that, please join us for January 10th webinar. That webinar will be facilitated by Aaron Moat, the executive director and co-founder of Innovate EDU. All right, so again, that webinar will be January 10th. Be on the lookout for that on our website. Definitely register because, again, this will be a workshop webinar so that you are working with these different tools and resources and applying it to real world experiences in and outside of the classroom. Now, before you all go, I'm going to go ahead and share a feedback form in the chat box. So before you leave, go ahead and fill that out. We would love to hear your feedback. And of course, share any ideas that you would like to have presented in any future webinars leading up to the Beyond School Hours Conference. And Dr. Arnold, thank you so much for helping us understand AI in education. It was very informative. Definitely learned a lot of new things, especially with what AI is and is not. Super important, especially as we try to figure out all these new tools that we can use in education today.
Thank you. And a really quick thank you to my colleague, Scott Moss, who also helped guide this conversation. So much appreciated. And thank you all for hosting this lovely event.
Thank you. So again, I'll go ahead and drop that feedback form in the chat box. Again, hopefully we'll see you all January 10th for our next AI webinar. Again, it's a workshop to practice these applications and resources. All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.